Big Brother, mainstream media, government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he. Live from Austin, Texas, broadcasting worldwide, it's Alex Jones.
But out of the gates, Max Keiser, with Iran, Syria, all of it, what is front and center on your radar screen right now? What's got you fired up? What makes you leap out of bed at 5 a.m. in the morning, turbocharging towards the coffee maker, like I know you do, to fight for liberty? What's got you going wild?
First of all, what is a psychotronic weapon? That's what I want to know.
It's just electronic, ultra-low frequency, high frequency, different combinations that can make you sick, make you happy, make you aroused. They've had them for more than 60 years. Different wavelengths that affect brain chemistry.
Yeah, because I know they have those laser sound now, where they can pinpoint an individual with a sound from 100 yards away.
It projects into the middle ear, yes. Yeah, that's a patent in the 40s. Yes, they have that, but now they're moving just to frequencies that are broadcast through the cell towers. On record, DARPA admits this, that can affect mood, but details remain classified, Max. Kind of like the White House Science Czar admits there's spraying stuff in the air, but details are classified, Max. You don't need to know about that.
Oh, did you see that in the United Kingdom that there was a case with the Rothschilds where somebody called the Rothschilds the puppet master, and the courts in the UK said this is not libelous, that in fact the Rothschilds, you can call them puppet master. This was just broken in the UK press like 2 days ago. You probably already covered it.
You know, I didn't mention it, but it was Daily Mail got sued by him, and the head Rothschild said, I don't meet with oligarchs, I don't control Russian oligarchs, even though, as you know, it had come out that whenever they would bust an oligarch, Putin would, they would learn that the billions of dollars were really belong to the Rothschilds, and the guy was a front. I mean, I remember that in a bunch of news articles, and so I know that the paper won the suit and has now found photos of him actually over in Russia with them.
Yeah, so Stacy, of course, my companion, girlfriend, and Valentine Day lover, immediately said, oh, there Alex Jones is right again.
I wish I wasn't right. I wish you weren't right. The NDAA, all of it, Max. What do you make of that, of him going, I don't run anything, I don't have any power, look over there?
Well, I tell you, asked me what's on my mind these days. I mean, I think the MF Global story is an important change, a sea change. It's the end of one era and the beginning of a new era. Nobody questions, nobody doubts now that what happened was that a bank, in this case, J.P. Morgan, simply went into customers' accounts and took over $1 billion. And this is, I think that we have to understand now that the hope of reforming the banking system in some way is over. You know, that battle is now lost. We lost that battle because there's no investigation, there's no anything going on. MF Global is the beginning of a new era. These bankers can just reach in and take money without even anyone questioning it. So I'm focusing now actually on copyright as in Hollywood and the SOPA and ACTA. And I'm going to focus less on banks and bank criminals because I just think that's over now. We lost. The MF Global signifies the end of any hope of any reform.
It signals divine right of international bankers instead of kings. If they want to take your money and then get caught lying to Congress, they're going to do it. Here's the headline out of the London Telegraph. Nathaniel Rothschild loses high court libel battle. And it says Nathaniel Rothschild, the billionaire financier, has lost a high court libel action over a claim that he was the puppet master behind the deal involving Lord Mandelson and a Russian oligarch. And, of course, it all went to pot when he said he never met with these people, and the photos and videos got released of them all in meetings in Russia.
Yeah, so there you go. So that now can be the so-called conspiracy theory relating to that family is now a conspiracy fact. And again, You know, the Alex Jones is always 6 months ahead of everybody else, or 2 years ahead of everyone else. But so I think that the SOPA and ACTA battles can be won because with people like Anonymous on the web and others, they're really winning battles. You know, with the SOPA battle.
What would you do if you got a letter threatening to sue you from a major publisher saying you can no longer use the word dummies? Well,
you know, Facebook is trying to trademark the word face to give you an idea of how crazy this is getting.
Yeah, in fact, News Corp, didn't they sue Skype because it has the word sky in it? I mean, now it's like pick a word out of another word. I mean, it's just reached cartoon level.
Right, they wanted to trademark fair and balanced. And, of course, Murdoch, not only was he caught spying on people, which is now a huge scandal, but now there's another huge scandal in the Murdoch press about police bribing. So, you know, Rupert Murdoch, who's the mainstream media, not only is he a horrible lawbreaker, but he's a horrible businessman. You know, he sold MySpace. He bought MySpace for $500 million, sold it for $34 million to a group of investors, including some young musicians. Now it's signing up 40,000 people a day. It's becoming a big hit. Again, Rupert Murdoch is a horrible businessman, but that's the kind of people who have incredible power because they use the power of the press, the mainstream media, to influence political outcomes. You know, Tony Blair was beholden to Murdoch, Bill Clinton and the Bushes, and Obama's beholden to the mainstream media, and they use copyright as leverage. They use copyright as a weapon. They use it as a way to control people. And I think this is a battle that can be won because the hackers and the pirates and the anonymous group have always proven to be one step ahead. And when they win the battle is when, of course, Wikipedia went dark for a day, and suddenly people understood that there was an opposing force against this copyright legislation, and they immediately backed down.
Yeah, but even the trademark rule doesn't mean that a journalist or someone can't. I mean, if you trademark the word Titanic, I can still write about the Titanic. They're even claiming you can't even say the word. That's like when McDonald's 15 years ago sued the McDonald's family of Scotland, who's royal, who owns a castle, because they had a castle farm and a castle pub that for 1,000 years plus had sold beer and cheese. And they said, you can't call it McDonald's pub.
Yeah, or I just read that Warner Brothers is suing Disney over The Wizard of Oz because the book mentions red slippers and the does not, and the movie does, and they can't make a remake because the book is on copyright and the movie is off, and it just goes back and forth. And they're using copyright, as you point out, to control language in an insidious manner that's creeping into our civil liberties in a way that's just completely unconscionable.
We'll be back, absolutely. I want to get back with Max Keiser into this open globalist assault on free speech. You got Twitter, Facebook, Google. Every day I see 3 or 4 articles, I know you're seeing them as well, where they say, oh, we're going to comply with this government or that. If people are saying where speed traps are on Twitter, we're going to block them. If people are criticizing the Indonesian government, we're going to ban them. Yeah, we're going to, Google's going to take down or block videos that the U.S. government says are critical of the government. And now documents have come out that Big Sis is spying on the Drudge Report and others, and to track people that are criticizing the government because that hurts their capability to protect us. We've got to enslave you to protect you. I want to get back into that, Max, but in this short segment, what does it signify? Because this was my concern. If they can now say at MF Global, we're going to go ahead and keep your money. Yes, it's illegal. And yes, we did lie. And the head of the CF, the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, CME, comes out and says Corzine lied. He did order the money transferred, obviously, and the mainstream media acts like they don't know where it went, even though Forbes reported where it went months ago. I can hardly talk. There's so many points I want to make. And now they just get away with it. What does that signify, Max?
Well, it signifies a complete abrogation of the rule of law. There's simply no law at all. And look, anyone with a Series 7 broker's license, what I had for many years when I was working on Wall Street, is literally a license to steal. Now, when I was working on Wall Street, the the manager would come around and say, break any law you want, we got lawyers. As a matter of fact, unless you had at least one client suing you, you weren't considered to be showing enough initiative, because the entire industry was set up that any complaints went to binding arbitration before a panel of brokers and bankers. You do not go to a jury. But that mentality has gone global, and it's gone into a multi-hundred-billion-dollar financial services industry that is now literally going into countries like Greece, stealing hundreds of billions of dollars and walking away scot-free. And then getting the local government, who of course works for the banks, to impose austerity measures as a way to pay off this multi-decade of debt that they themselves had nothing to do to incur. The Greek people did not create $500 billion of debt. That debt was passed to them through their governments from foreign banks. The same thing's happening in the U.S., as you know, the same thing happening all over the world. But there's absolutely no recourse. There's no rule. There's no body, no jurisdiction that is making any case against any of these people who are engaged in outright theft. I mean, you have to, I don't want to pull the Nazi card because it's overly done, but you have to really go back to the 1930s and see what was done in Germany to folks. And it was all legal. Of course, this is what you hear all the time, Alex, from the mainstream media. And Obama says the same thing. He says, it's all legal. What they did was all legal. Yes, what Hitler did was all legal too, Alex. He passed the laws to make it legal to confiscate wealth and to put people into a ghetto and to cremate them. What's happening in Greece right now is we're heading toward a financial holocaust, and those people are going to end up with the same final solution. And the bankers at Davos will say, well, this is great because this is the deflation we need to offset the inflation of all our money printing. We'll offset our inflation by incinerating a few thousand people or 1 million people. It's the exact same mentality, the exact same playbook. It's happening again, and there's nobody standing up to it. And of course, if in the case of, let's say, and you make this point all the time, in the United States, of course, if it's not the Super Bowl one weekend or the Academy Awards the next weekend, or, mass sobbing over the death of Whitney Houston on any given day, there's no space in the nightly news other than your news where people are talking about the fact that there is a holocaust, a financial holocaust happening in Greece right now. That's not discussed. So that means that the people in the United States who don't talk about this are, by extension, participating in it. But they are ameliorated with the entertainment value and the ultra-cheap food and the ultra-cheap energy that's still available in the U.S. And so then it's just not talked about. But it's as I said, I think we're in a new era now because there's absolutely no pushback at all against.
And that's my next question when we come back and then get into other news and go to calls, Max Keiser. What's coming next? I mean, if they can get away with anything, sticking their hands down our pants, stealing our bank accounts, lying to Congress, shipping guns to Mexico to blame the Second Amendment, putting toxic poison in the water, what's coming next? All I know is that I've done some basic studying of history, and I've studied the corptocracy of kleptocrats that we have running things, and they are definitely clinically ill from a case of megalomaniacal chutzpah, megalomaniacal bravado, megalomaniacal craziness. I mean, look at Corzine, 40-to-1 bet, other people's money, lies before Congress, gets caught lying, and now the entire corporate media structure, the whole system is coming out and saying, we don't know where the money went. And as I pointed out 3 months ago when this all started, It was in Forbes, it was in the Associated Press that most of the money had been wired to London and J.P. Morgan. But then I guess J.P. Morgan said, hey, don't say it came to us, just say it's a mystery where it went. And so now everybody says we don't know where it went, and federal regulators are in the news, the financial news, every week saying, gee, we don't know where it is. Now, if you wire $1,000, there's a record of it. You wire $10,000, there is a criminal investigation opened called a suspicious transactions report. It's a global rules. Homeland Security runs the whole thing worldwide. It's standardized because the globalists want to know where money is going so they can steal it. They only shut down the drug dealers they want to shut down. They only shut down the money launderers they want to shut down. Goldman Sachs, all these people that are involved taking over countries, they're conquerors. They're crooks, and that's what Max is talking about. And now they're playing along like they don't know where the money went when it's public where it went. And the so-called media is playing along. I mean, Max, that's what's really frightening here. It's not just that the globalists are thieves. It's that just like Caligula or Hitler or anybody, they get so arrogant they start going wild and always bring themselves down, but generally they bring tens of millions down with them. You know, democide in the 20th century, Max, killed more people than anything else, and it's an academic term, well known in academia, but not ever on the news. Of course, that's death by government. They killed 264 million people last century conservatively, Max, not counting warfare, not counting troop casualties. With this type of insanity at this level, what's coming next?
Well, you know, just to be clear, again, the significance of the MF Global story and my experience as a stockbroker on Wall Street for many years, there was a barrier called segregated accounts that no lunatic who even was bent all the rules or broke all the rules, you would never go into a segregated customer account. It's heavily coded as such within the system and steal money. I mean, of all the crimes that we did forgery all the time. We did all kinds of criminal behavior. I mean, every single stop, by definition, if you have your Series 7's license, you are a criminal. That's pretty much the business model of Wall Street. And I've told you some of the tricks that we used to use, look-back trades and other things we used to use to just print money all day long. But when you go into the segregated account and just steal from a customer like that, that's a whole nother dimension to this history of bank collapse and criminality that we've seen when the Lehman Brothers collapse and the big TARP bailout that Hank Paulson engineered by threatening Congress with martial law. I mean, this is a new chapter, and it literally means that people's bank accounts and their brokerage accounts are not safe from the meddling fingers of somebody who simply can reach in there and steal their money. And this is something that is just a new chapter. So anybody who had an escape plan, and I noticed I just saw a story on Reuters, and I sent you the link. The number of people who are renouncing their U.S. citizenship in the last 12 months has skyrocketed. People are getting out of the U.S., they are renouncing their citizenship, and they're getting out of the United States. They don't trust the United States. Anyone with any means at all is leaving. The embassies are chock-a-block. They're stuffed with people trying to get to their exit interviews, because in order to renounce your citizenship, you have to go into the embassy or an affiliated institutional branch, and you have to go through an exit interview, and they then give you a certificate which formally you have renounced your citizenship, and from that moment forward, the U.S. is no longer has claim to you. But the number of people at embassies around the world who are waiting to do this, they can't handle the volume. Anyone who's really got anything to protect realizes that when, for example, they shut down Switzerland, why? Because those American banks wanted to get into the money laundering business. The American banks wanted to get into the secret bank account business. It's not that Switzerland was closed down as a place to launder money or hide money. No, the United States, the Wall Street banks wanted that business for themselves.
Well, more than that, Max, as you know, they admit, and I was just playing a clip earlier about this global government they want to get all the little guys' money. Somebody who put $20 million in over 30 years. That sounds like a lot to most people. That's nothing to a globalist who's stolen tens of billions. They want to rob all the little guys. And you notice when they have gone after Swiss banks, it's always, you know, for $2, $3, $5, $10 million. It's always just setting that precedent. But expanding on that, Max, and looking at this, I ran into some of the family, and after I met them and talked to them, I went and looked them up. It really was them, of John Wayne's kids, some of John Wayne's children, you know, famous actor. And they were leaving the United States and selling everything they had. They had a ranch outside Austin, and well, that was 2 years ago. They've now left the United States to Costa Rica. And I asked them why, and they said because the government's going to raise taxes and rob everybody, and it's changing the rules, and all the money's leaving. And I've talked to a lady who is worth over $3 billion, owned one of the biggest defense contractor companies, one of the richest women in the world. I'm going to just leave it at that. I probably already said who it is with that information. And she left the country 4 years ago and said the United States will not exist, and you're going to be huge because everything you're saying is going to come true. And if you live, you're going to be the biggest thing in media out there. And I said, why? And she said, because you're 100% on target. And then I went and looked her up, and it was her. So, but see, that's not like, oh, great, I've been right. It's horrible news, Max. The money is running like they're scared to death. What are they scared of?
Well, you know, first of all, it's not about taxes or raising taxes. It's more about what you see at the TSA now. We get reports all the time about TSA agents just stealing money and shaking people down, basically, and stealing property. And this is now becoming endemic throughout the U.S. in every tier, right up to the level of J.P. Morgan. You know, Jamie Dimon, who runs J.P. Morgan, stealing money from MF Global clients. And by the way, that number I just saw a report was raised out to raised again to $1.6 billion that they say that they can't find. You know, it's an incredible economy where Walmart can tell you where a razor blade they sold 3 years ago is in a landfill somewhere with some RFID tag. But the major bank on Wall Street has misplaced $1.6 billion. I mean, that's an amazing admission in this day and age where everything is known by everyone on the corporation front and on Wall Street. But you've got right up from the top, the Jamie Dimons of the world, right down to the TSA agent. They simply now steal. Stealing has become legitimized. You know, I've said since I've been coming on your show that the closest antecedent to what's happening in the U.S. has got to be Argentina, 2000, 2001. And there's a brilliant 12-part series on YouTube, a documentary, where they show the rich loading up trucks, armored vehicles, and driving the money out of Buenos Aires, leaving the people with nothing but pots and pans. And if you look what's happening in Greece, this is exactly what just happened in Greece. Those people had $400 billion of their GDP stolen. They're sitting there with pots and pans now. They've got nothing.
And it's not even their debt again, and they admit the mega banks that did it,
right. Well,
that infiltrated their government, are now taking over the country, and they're not going to be able to vote anymore.
Well, look, in Argentina, that was the template. The debt was from Citibank that the Argentinian government nationalized, and they passed a law. And, of course, it's all legal. This is what you always hear. It's completely legal. They nationalized all this foreign debt, and then they forced it onto the people in the terms of austerity. Same thing in Greece. Same thing in all of these situations where you find the IMF and the other Troika members meddling around, involved in these massive scams. And in the U.S., of course, now you see it happening with the TSA agent is a perfect metaphor for what's happening throughout the entire economy, right up to the CEO's office of the biggest banks in America. They simply steal your money. They're not doing some leveraged, a derivatives trade as a way to move risk from one balance sheet to another as keeping liquidity or making a market. No, none of that is happening. They're just stealing. And this has gone to the point where people now are renouncing their U.S. citizenship in record numbers. Since they started tracking this, the number has never been higher. It's up 200 or 300% from last year. And the lines at embassies around the world to renounce U.S. citizenship are growing every single day.
How bad is it going to get?
Well, I mean, in the U.S., the U.S. is in a very interesting position because it has been the chief beneficiary of these banking scandals for decades. And what I mean by that is that in the U.S., the price of energy and food is still, compared to other countries, very cheap. So somebody making $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a year can actually have a reasonable life because the lifestyle even, because the cost of energy and food as compared with these other countries is still relatively is cheap because the U.S. has the reserve currency and because so much of the U.S. economy is subsidized. You know, when the Republicans say they hate big government, that is a big joke because the economy of the U.S. is nothing but underwritten and subsidized by big government. The agriculture industry, you talked about the Mexican Coca-Cola being sweeter than the American Coca-Cola and the high fructose corn syrup. That's because corn is subsidized by big government to the point where the price of corn is so cheap that they inject it into food into America, and 60% of every calorie you take in the United States is from high fructose corn syrup. Because of the underwriting that comes from the government.
They just come in and lobby the corporations and the food makers to put it in there, basically giving it to them. And it's the same thing with fluoride in the water, everything.
Right, so
special interests come in and make you do this.
The price of food ends up being extraordinarily cheap. It's horrible for you, and you end up having to take supplements to survive, but the basic food at the fast food joint is incredibly cheap. Same thing for energy. Oil prices do not reflect the world market because it got wars going on all over the world. The biggest buyer of gasoline is the Pentagon. They spend $230 million a day on gas. To gas up all those vehicles for the Pentagon, to go into all these countries and just shoot people indiscriminately because for fun, $230 million a day they spend on gas. Okay, now to keep that flowing, they've got relationships with Saudi Arabia, which, of course, then you open up that whole Mideast quandary, and you see how the propaganda comes out and how we're targeting Iran and why Syria is bad, but Bahrain is good. And, you end up in this incredible quagmire.
Let me raise that for you and then go to calls, Max, because that's the next issue I wanted to raise with you here today. Why is the establishment so arrogant that they're openly putting al-Qaeda in charge in the areas of Syria they've invaded, al-Qaeda in charge of Libya, al-Qaeda now being put in everywhere, and the media admitting that the U.S. and Israel are using al-Qaeda terror groups? That was in NBC News a few nights ago. Like it's a good thing. Like I've got to have a pot-bellied pervert grab my genitals and try to grope my children at the airport and go after my wife because terrorists are everywhere, al-Qaeda, but al-Qaeda openly works for the government. But then I'm bad to say 9/11's an inside job.
Well, the al-Qaeda worked for the government, to fight the Russians in Afghanistan. Bin Laden was working for the U.S., and then he wasn't working for the U.S., and now the al-Qaeda is working for the U.S. And the history of the U.S. foreign policy is like this. They flip and swap. There's no ideology behind it. It's simply empire out there trying to get secure resources for the cheapest possible price. That's the whole methodology to it. There is no ideology. There is no democracy building. None of that happens. They've got drones just destroying schools. They're not out there building schools. They're just out there securing oil because the price of oil in the U.S., even at $4 or $4.50 a gallon, is incredibly cheap compared to Europe. It's $12, $13, $14 a gallon now to buy gas in Paris. Because France doesn't have the Pentagon going around the world blowing people up for their oil reserves. So I'm saying, America, this is what makes America very interesting, is that even though they're getting screwed horribly, the average person still has cheap food, cheap gas. They have a reasonably comfortable life, even at this point, even at this late stage of the game. So the U.S. is not motivated, even though you can tell them how bad things are. The average person is still not feeling it. And this is what the guardians of this empire in Washington know. The guys, the neocons, the Rumsfelds, the Cheneys, they know that their job is to just get resources as cheaply as possible and to take the flack, to take all the jibes and the sarcasm and to be portrayed as bad guys. But they believe that they're doing the job of keeping the masses, in cheap oil and cheap food, and they've done a job doing that. Now, unfortunately, and what you're saying, what I'm saying, what Gerald Celente is saying, and what other people are saying, is that there reaches a point where it can't sustain it. It's unsustainable. And that shift, when suddenly the debt bomb that has blown up Greece and blown up other countries finally blows up the U.S. economy and prices double and triple overnight, the very top, those people who orchestrated this whole campaign, they're going to be gone. They're not going to be in the United States. They're going to be living elsewhere.
And there's the answer. There's the answer. We're going to do a few more segments of calls after the break. But you're right. That's why the rich are leaving, is because when they finally implode the U.S., they're going to totally implode it. And just going to leave us behind with a bunch of militarized police and TSA running around. And, boy, I wouldn't want their jobs, because you're going to have 400 million guns and a bunch of angry people. It's going to be a mess, Max.
Well, yeah. I mean, I believe that the timing is, all the signs are there, but I also can understand why people are not motivated to get up and do anything right now, because they still have a reasonable lifestyle, and they still feel that the risk of losing their reasonable comfort level is not worth risking.
They just don't know that by letting the New World Order come in, they're ensuring their destruction. But they'll find out soon enough. Call straight ahead with Max Keiser at maxkeiser.com. Folks, if you go to Infowars.com, you can see our big article up there concerning Navy SEAL sources. They say the false flag is in the offing. That is big news, and they say warn people before it happens, because there's one thing these banksters love to pull. That's a war to grab even more power. Let's take a few calls in this short segment, the next, with Max Keiser, our guest. Val in Montana, you're on the air with both of us. Welcome.
Hi there. Thanks and honor, Alex.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Hi, Max. Monsaval, Max.
Yeah, your phone doesn't sound too understandable, but go ahead and try.
Okay, I have a pretty bad connection out here. I'm in a pretty remote area. Sorry about that. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, it sounds like it's not the connection, it's the telephone. You're on a hands-free?
Okay. Okay, well, I just wanted to talk about the sewer main media.
Oh, that's a good name for them, sewer main media.
Yeah, it's my term of endearment for them, among others. I to pay homage to Celente, every now and then I'll refer to him as Mustang Ranch.
The prostitute media, the chicken ranch.
Yeah, I've heard you call him that. I want to talk about, I want to ask you guys if you know Rush Limbaugh well enough to tell me why he will, because Max was talking about different ways of getting people to really move this thing in the other direction, and real vocal people like yourself and others have made so much progress. Here we have Rush Limbaugh, who will go so far, and he could tip this thing over on the the tipping point. He could move this thing the other way with Ron Paul and so forth. What is he doing? How come he will go so far?
Well, they're in there to be steam valves and control people, and that's why the system has put him forward. There's a lot of people with more talent than Rush Limbaugh, but he's put up there as the big king daddy because he'll play along with the establishment system. I mean, that's very, very, easy answer. And the sewer stream media, I appreciate your call. That's a good question. Max, where do you see the sewer stream media going?
Well, I mean, this is an interesting question because Rush Limbaugh and Bill O'Reilly and Michael Savage, these guys are what I call the shock right, the right wing on the shock. I know I don't want to get into a whole discussion about right versus left. I just want to, for the purposes of making this point, let me digress. Okay, he is on the shock right. There is nobody in America who's on the shock left. There is on MSNBC, you've got Rachel Maddow, she's a centrist. You've got Amy Goodman of Democracy Now! She's in the center. Tom Hartman, who's on RT, he's also a biggest so-called progressive radio host in America. I don't even think he's on the left either. He's a centrist. There is no left. There is no shock left. Imagine if Max Keiser had a 3-hour every morning talk show on a major network in America. Number one, Rush Limbaugh's ratings would collapse. Number two, all heck would break loose because suddenly you've got both a shock right and a shock left. There's no balance.
But Max, I wouldn't call you left. I don't even go off those terms. They've tried to put up the young turd guy.
I don't want to digress into this whole right-left business, but in the case of the radio landscape in America, and you've got your show, which is completely independent, and you've cobbled together this massive audience by dint of sheer brute strength. You've just gone outside of the mainstream, and yet you've got this huge audience. But other than that, it's a wasteland. There is no opposing voices.
No, you're right. You're right. Stay there. But I was just looking at the Rothschilds on Wikipedia. Hundreds of palaces, castles, more than the royal family of England. Just owning giant combines all over the world, major stock in every major central bank, unknown trillions in overall aggregate wealth, and they'll sue a newspaper for saying he's a puppet master and manipulating Russian oligarchs. I mean, it just shows how they try to use the courts now against people, but thank God the courts ruled against them. It's super creepy, Max.
Well, first of all, I want to ask, is there something I should read into the fact that you're having me on your show on Valentine's Day? I mean, I know you like me and I like you, but I don't know if I like you like that.
Okay, Max, I just want to say, I told him about a week ago, I said, I want to get Max Keiser on, and they set you up today, and so, that's what's going on. Was that intentional that somebody set him up on Valentine's Day?
Oh, it's so sweet. I didn't know you thought of me like that.
Well, Max, I have to be honest. I didn't ever even think of such a thing until now. But thanks to you, you've entered that into my mind.
And here I am, just enjoying a nice glass of tangy tangerine, having a fantastic time. Now, anyway, so the Rothschilds are, in fact, they have, that scene in, in a good movie reference is in the movie The Sting, where the criminal is on the golf course. And he says, I want you to go break that guy's legs. And he says, gee, boss, he's just a low-level grifter. And he goes, well, if we let a low-level grifter get away, someday they'll be coming after us. We got to be, take care of this. And this is the way they think. If there's any challenge at all, in any sense, they will go after you with the full force of everything they have to put you down. Because they don't want a single scintilla of dissent to any way to challenge their monopoly, pricing, rent-seeking, empire-building kleptocracy.
Well, you're right, and they want a global government with carbon taxes to shut everybody down while ignoring all the real problems in the environment. Why are the elites allowing all this GMO stuff that's destroying the Earth's original biosphere and endangering everything? And why do the elites allow the military to detonate hydrogen bombs in the upper atmosphere? I mean, and it's like they're trying to destroy the planet or something.
Well, Monsanto, of course, the big seller of genetically modified seeds, the business model is quite remarkable because they figured out that you could trade seeds like a currency. In this case, the Monsanto Terminator seeds that don't reproduce. So you have to buy those seeds continuously every single year, and you have to borrow money to buy those seeds. This is why the exact number I don't have at my fingertips, but something like 2,000 Indian farmers a month commit suicide because Monsanto has priced agriculture so far out of reach of the average Indian farmer that they simply kill themselves. And they approach agriculture the way Jamie Dimon and JP Morgan approach the credit markets or approach the finance market. They fill it with derivatives. They completely overextend it with massive financialization of something called agriculture. And then they subject the people who are supposed to be using this product, farmers, to onerous debt loads to the point where they're indentured servants or they kill themselves. And quite frankly, they don't care. Monsanto, of course, has a track record of this type of behavior going back to Agent Orange in the Vietnam War and all kinds of other transgressions that the company's been guilty of that makes them an extraordinary amount of money. The board of directors is full of the same guys on the board of directors for Halliburton or Exxon or any of these other major corporations who are part of the Pentagon or part of the Wall Street banking establishment. And they all swap notes and they go to Davos. And of course, remember last year at Davos, they floated the idea of recapitalizing the global economy with $100 trillion worth of fresh debt.
Which will all go to them, and then they'll pose as our saviors. Sorry to some of the other callers. Didn't get to you. Max, great job. Thank you for joining us and chronicling our spiraling descent into the New World Order. The answer is say no to the New World Order. See you back tonight, 7 o'clock.
Everything we said came true. Everything we've done has been right.